Hey everyone, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2017 Chevy Silverado 1500, we're going to be showing you how to install the Demco Air Force One supplemental braking system for those of you that have the Spartan K2 400 series motorhomes. But before we do that, let's take a minute, check it out, and make sure it's going to be what you need. Before we jump right in, I want to address one of the big questions that a lot of people wonder when it comes to flat towing a vehicle down the road, and that is, what parts am I going to need? So there's going to be a total of 5 main components. Your first one will be the base plate. That'll hook up to your vehicle's frame and provide us with an attachment point. That way we can hook our tow bar up. This is the second component, and it's going to be the actual link that connects the front of your vehicle to the back of your coach. The third main part will be safety cables. Those are just there in the event of an unlikely disconnect to keep everything paired together. Your fourth main part will be tow bar wiring, and this is going to transfer the lighting signals from the back of your RV to the back of your truck. And last but not least, the fifth main part will be a supplemental braking system. And what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your truck whenever you hit the brakes in your motorhome, bringing you to a more predictable and complete stop. Now that we know a general idea on what parts we're actually going to need when it comes to the braking system, probably wondering, is this going to work with my motorhome? And if you have a 2019 or newer Spartan K2 400 series chassis, chances are really good it will. And a super quick way to tell is if on the back of your motorhome, if you have a fitting like this, it's just an air fitting. And if you have this going on back here already, then the answer is yes, this kit will work. And what's really convenient with these late model motorhomes coming right out of the factory, they're already equipped with the Air Force One side for the motorhome. So definitely a no-brainer and a great matchup to use the vehicle side of things to complete your whole braking system package. If you happen to have another manufacturer of late model motorhome, a lot of them are starting to do this now, put that Air Force One side on right out of the box. So like I said, if you got a different chassis manufacturer, might be worth looking into. If you have a fitting like that back here, chances are really good Demco make a kit that will accomplish the same thing. And even if not, let's say you don't have this fitting, or you have an older motorhome or whatever, there's tons of different variations of this braking system. You can get the whole complete kit that'll come with the motorhome side parts and the vehicle side parts, and allow you to get everything set up. To me, it does make a lot of sense that the factory's starting to put the Air Force One on their coaches. And I say that because we've done a ton of Demco braking systems here at eTrailer. Me personally as well, I've probably done 100 of them, if I had to guess at least. And they're super reliable. They flat out just work. And you rarely run into any issues with them. And even if you do, it's usually something minor and small and a real quick fix. So, factory has confidence in them. I got confidence in them. And so makes for a great kit. One of the benefits to a setup like this is the fact that it's a proportional style system. And so more or less what that means is your truck is going to match the braking pressure of your coach. Just to kind of give you an example, that let's say if you're going down the road, you hit a stoplight or something up ahead, and you're halfway on the brake. The truck is going to do the same thing. On the other hand, if you're going down the highway, maybe there's traffic or something up there, and you really have to come to a quick stop and really stand on that brake pedal, the Chevy's going to respond the same way. So overall, you're just stopping as one cohesive unit, and just makes for a better and smoother stopping experience. As far as getting everything set up, when you are ready to flat tow, it's extremely simple. All you're going to have to do is plug the air line into the back of your motorhome, and you'll also have a tether here that you just clip around the hitch on your motorhome. All right, and these are just going to run to the front of your vehicle, and the air line will plug into the provided fitting there. And the tether will get connected to this component, which is the breakaway switch. And more or less, this is just a safety feature. What happens, in the event of an unlikely disconnect, this pin would get pulled out. And when that happens, it's going to activate the braking system, helping to kind of slow everything down and get it back under control. There's also going to be an indicator light, which when the brake pedal is being pulled down, it will illuminate red, letting you know that the system is indeed working properly. And with that said, you can always upgrade too. There's a wireless coach link monitor that essentially puts this into the dashboard of your motorhome. So that's always an option for you as well. Other than that, there's really no reason you shouldn't use this kit if this is the type of motorhome that you got. This chassis that comes pre-installed with these parts just makes complete sense, you know. As far as the installation goes, really not too bad, especially for a braking system. The vehicle side of things, there's not a whole lot of parts there compared to some of the others, and really shouldn't give you a ton of issues. Everything's pretty open and easy to get to. So take your time, you should be in pretty good shape, but if you're gonna be installing it yourself, stick around, we'll go ahead, pull into the garage and get going on it now. To begin our installation, we're gonna first need to mount up our main operating unit. And underneath the hood here on our truck on the driver's side, up along the sheet metal here is where we mounted our main operating unit. So pretty straightforward. I just used some self-tapping screws to secure it to the sheet metal. Got a couple of things we can do right here. So on our operating unit, you're gonna have two black wires coming out of it. You need to take one of them, doesn't matter which one, and ground it. So I did this one here, just wrapped it around and grounded it where our diode wiring was using a ring terminal and a self-tapping screw. So just into a good clean piece of metal, and that'll wrap that portion up. And then the other black wire coming out of it, these ends are pre-stripped already, but you can take a butt connector, slide that over the bare end of the wire, and crimp it down. And this is how all of our connections are going to be made, whether it be a butt connector or a ring terminal or anything along those lines. And I actually upgraded to the heat shrink style too, because the ends will seal up, protect against corrosion a little bit better. So definitely recommend that during an installation, especially like this, picking up some extras. But what we're going to do, all right, is run a couple of wires and some tubing down. Okay, so I'll show you exactly what I did. I took an extra piece of yellow wire and an extra piece of black wire and pushed those down. All right, and the black wire is what we're going to be working with first. So I'll strip that back, and then the twist there. Plug that into our butt connector. And eventually these two wires will go to our breakaway switch, which will be at the front of our truck here. I'm going to crimp that down. And with the ends being heat shrinks, come back with a heat source and seal them up. You can take the big bundle of airline tube that they give you, and that's going to drop down with our black and yellow wire towards the front of the truck. And you know, this will get plugged into our operating unit here, but before you plug these in, you want to make sure that the ends have a good clean straight cut. So you want to use a tool like this. There's even a tubing cutter. You can use a razor edge and a block of wood, something along them lines. But you don't want any burrs or anything on it, you know, that way it doesn't leak. So that's a good example of how it should look. And the way these air fittings work, they're just quick connects, so they push right in. And this hose we're going to want to plug into the air in portion there. You'll feel it kind of snap into place, and that's how you know it's connected. Now at the front of the truck, you know, where those wires and air tube that we dropped down would come out in this area, but we're going to need to know where to route them. So that leads me to my next point. we have two more components that we can install here at the front of our truck. One of them being our air fitting. So in our case, the bracket that came with our base plate has a hole in it, and it was perfect size for our air fitting just to bolt to it. The one that comes in the kit, you know, it'll come with its own bracket too, so if you need to mount yours up differently, so be it. Just bolt it up there where you have easy access. And the breakaway switch is this component here, and not a lot of space here at the front of our truck. And I was able to actually kind of modify this front part here. So I'll get this down a little bit lower where we can take a better look at it. What I was able to do for our breakaway switch, this little opening, you know, I cut a square hole out just a little bit bigger than the size of the breakaway switch in the plastic, which allowed the back half of this to pass through to essentially the bottom side of our truck behind our bumper, where we can actually bolt it down to secure it. Where it comes through, I just use a self-tapping screw to secure that breakaway switch to this piece of metal here. It's super solid. It gives us a great attachment point. And with that said, we have an orange and black wire coming out of the breakaway switch, which is going to get routed over towards the driver's side of our vehicle. Here's where our breakaway switch wires ended up. And this is where we connected them. So that extra black wire that we hooked up to our operating unit and dropped down, that got connected to the black breakaway switch wire. Then that extra yellow one that we dropped down, I just hooked that up to the orange breakaway switch wire. The other end of the yellow wire, you know, that's up in the engine compartment. We'll worry about that in a minute. But in case you're wondering how we routed the breakaway switch wires, and we can focus on that piece of airline tubing as well. That just kind of gets tucked up, kind of behind our bumper. So you can see there's the breakaway switch wires. They go right over to it. And as far as that airline tube, that's going to get dropped down. And if we look at the back of our fitting, it's going to have a quick connect attached to it. And so you can cut that airline to length the same way we did it earlier, and simply just plug that right into the back of the quick connect. Back under the hood, we can focus on getting our vacuum port all set up. So take the line that they give you, maybe cut off 2 or 3 inches of it. Then you're going to have a check valve. Take the black side of the check valve, and that just pushes right into that line like that. And then take the rest of the airline that they give you, push that into the white portion of the check valve. And that's going to just plug into that barbed fitting labeled vacuum coming out of our operating unit. Moving to your brake booster now, you're going to have this main vacuum line coming off of it. Right about there, I'm going to cut this in half. That way we can figure out what T's and everything we need to use to tap into it. At this point, we can kind of prep our vacuum assortment here, the T's at least. So you'll have another check valve, and the black side is going to face towards the engine. So on this clear white side, cut maybe another 2-inch piece of hose, push that on, and then take the T, push an end into it. And then this assembly here is actually going to kind of fill the gap here where we cut the line. So I'm going to grab a couple things, kind of get this set up, ready to go, and we can get this installed. So we'll take these hose clamps here and put one over this end. And we'll slide, or push this in rather. It is a tight fit, but that's a good thing. That way it doesn't leak. Get that pushed on. And actually, this T, if you take the line coming from your operating unit that we had plugged in earlier, you can cut that to length. Might as well push that on right now while we have some more working room. We'll go something like that. I'm just going to tighten this clamp down a little bit. These, you know, you don't have to crank down on them. Just get them snug. That way the line don't come off or anything like that, which it shouldn't anyway because it is tight, but I'd rather be safe. Mess around with it. Do another clamp on this side. We'll get this set up the same way here. Moving over here to the passenger side, we can hook up our power wire. So the kit's going to come included with the fuse holder. On one end of it, crimp on a ring terminal. On the other end, crimp on a butt connector. Make sure the fuse is not installed just yet. We'll do that at the very end. But this is going to have to go to power. So in our case, we have this automatic battery disconnect. This is the hot side of it. I just attached our ring terminal to that post there. If you're not using one of these, you just want to go to the positive battery terminal to supply your vehicle with power. But with that in mind, on the other end of our fuse holder, your kit's going to come with a big bundle of brown wire. Go ahead and crimp on that end of brown wiring into that butt connector. And this is going to run over to the driver's side of our vehicle. So I'll go ahead and get that routed and then show you the path that I took. I got our wiring just zip tied up to this factory piece of wiring here. Runs all the way across to the driver's side. And in the corner here, so that's our brown wire. And if you remember that extra piece of yellow wire that we used that we hooked up to the breakaway switch, I doubled them two ends up, so I just twisted them together, put it in one end of the butt connector and crimped it down. And then the remaining portion of that brown bundle of brown wire we had, I just plugged that into the other end of the butt connector. Now this wiring eventually will run inside of the cab into the truck, but I like to do this all at once. So we're going to have an airline tube that we can get set up and route that and this wiring into the cab. So let's go back to our main operating unit now. We'll grab our remaining portion of nylon air tubing, cut that in clean, and that's just going to plug into the air out fitting on our operating unit. And I got that looping around and following this wiring up into this corner here, you know, where our brown wire is and everything like that. And there's actually going to be a grommet right here in this area that we can utilize to get the wire and the tube into the cab. Here's a grommet that we utilized, and with it, there will be a little nipple that kind of protrudes off of it. You can very carefully cut that nipple off, and that'll, you know, open up to a hole that you can use to push your tubing and your wiring through. Inside of the truck, this is where our brown wire eventually ends, you know, coming out from under the dash through that grommet. Before we get this hooked up though, we're going to have a couple other components we need to get set up here. You can get your indicator light set up, which I just have it attached to the pillar here, kind of off to the corner. And this is just has two-sided sticky tape on the back of it. So that's how you get it secured. Just make sure you wipe off the surface real good with some rubbing alcohol, let it dry, that way it's clean. There's going to be a wire that comes off of it. And essentially I just kind of pulled back on this pillar and tuck that wire in back through here where it's going to be accessible on the outside here. So if you peel this other stripping off, it just pops off. You see a good opening to route your wire there. And just make sure to go on the back side of the airbag, you know, that way the wire doesn't interfere with it. But I just routed it all the way down here and feeding it through that gap all the way down And then once you get to this point, kind of just shoot it over a little bit where it drops down. And the wires, I already have them hooked up here, but before you hook them up, you are going to have to install the actuator cylinder down here at the brake pedal arm. So if you look at your brake pedal arm here, the cylinder is going to clamp onto it, and pretty straightforward. You know, you want it about halfway up the arm. That way it's out of the way of your foot, but still has good leverage. And I want to mention too, if your truck has the adjustable pedals, you want to make sure to pull them pedals all the way out or as close as possible to you when you set this up. With that said, so clamp it on, and you want this to have a good straight shot at the firewall. And once you have that complete, you can take that airline tube that we ran in here, cut it to length, and plug that into the quick connect fitting here. You're going to have a cable that comes off of the back of that cylinder. Like I said, you want it to have a good straight shot to the firewall. That way when the brake pedal's being pushed down or pulled down, this line isn't all crooked and everything. They give you a bracket with 3 holes in it that I used to put on the firewall, and just use the self-tapping screws. There is a stud, factory stud that comes out, and I just took a nylon lock nut and ran it down on it. Really don't hold that great, but that's all right. It's better than nothing, especially since we have the 2 other anchors tied down. And you're also going to want to set the tension on this, meaning, you know, you want this cylinder to have, excuse me, a little bit of movement in it whenever it's just in this resting position. That way you don't always have tension on the brake pedal arm. And on our truck with these adjustable pedals, you pretty much had to use up the whole length of this cable. But to adjust it on that anchor, there's a 4mm Allen head set screw. You can loosen up, you know, pull more line out or feed line back in, and then tighten it back down to achieve that proper tension there. Now that we have our components installed, we can get the wiring sorted. So off of your actuator cylinder, you're going to have this, you know, thick black wire that eventually breaks off into 2 skinny ones. The one that is brown or violet in color, that's going to get hooked up to that brown wire that we ran inside here through that grommet. The blue wire coming from the actuator cylinder, that's going to get hooked up to the red wire from our indicator light. All right, and then the black wire from our indicator light, that's going to need to get grounded. So what I did, I took about 2 foot of black wire that actually, I believe I got from the kit. I think they gave you a couple little pieces of it. Anywho, put that in a butt connector and ran that right up through here, and in this area underneath our steering wheel, that's where I have it grounded. Here's the ground, and there's actually a factory fastener removed at the 10mm, and then crimped on a ring terminal to the black wire, put it in place, and tighten that fastener back down. Now that we got everything hooked up, I took the included fuse and placed it into the holder, and that's going to power up or give power to our braking system. And you can clean up your wiring and everything if you want, you know, with wire loom and zip ties, kind of tidy everything up. Prior to doing that though, I do suggest testing the system. So you can hook up to your coach, you know, get some air pressure through the system and everything, and press the brake. And what should happen, our indicator light should illuminate and the brake pedal in the truck should be pulled down. To test ours, I have a quick tester that I made. That way we can put air pressure through it and not have to bother with pulling up to our coach, just while we're right here in the shop at least. So I'll put air in it, should see the light, illuminate, and that pedal will get pulled down. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Demco Air Force One supplemental braking system on our 2017 Chevrolet Silverado 1500.